North Carolina has promised Apple nearly $1 billion over 39 years to locate new facilities in North Carolina. That has prompted a column from Brian Balfour, 7 rotten aspects of North Carolina's Apple deal. Brian is Senior Vice President of Research at the John Locke Foundation. And Brian, let's just hit some of these rotten aspects of this deal. The first one that you list is cronyism.
Yeah, and of course, amid the welcome news of jobs coming to North Carolina and investment and everything, we do have to take in the context of what helped facilitate this deal, and it was that nearly $1 billion worth of incentives, as you said, and so that does really represent, big business, big government in bed together, and that just these kind of deals in which politicians are hand-picking corporations to which they grant political privilege really creates this environment that's ripe for corruption. Big businesses getting favors from government and politicians just really creates that environment for backroom deals and pay-to-play kind of schemes that people of all political stripes really oppose.
This fits in with your second item, which is a consolidation of political and economic power. This kind of deal sort of leads to that.
Yeah, and we've seen, especially lately, more and more big corporations becoming more vocal and utilizing their economic power to help exert political power. We've seen Apple specifically going back a handful of years during the big HB2 flap. Apple was a leading voice in condemning North Carolina for that law. So now that Apple has even greater presence in the state, we can expect more of that kind of big businesses teaming up with those politicians that are granting them the privileges, and these big businesses, getting on board with whatever political agenda, these politicians that are granting them the privileges.
The third thing you list is labeled promises, and I understand this is then the promises of new jobs.
Right, yeah, the announced 3,000 new jobs, that's part of the announcement, but when you look at research on these kind of incentive deals over the last several years, and one such investigation by WRAL found that about a third of these companies that they have these announcements for new jobs coming because of these incentive deals never created even a single job. And I think it was less than 60% of the promised number of jobs never materialize.
Yeah, and then the fourth item that you mentioned is centralized planning. And for those who don't follow economics a lot, this is this idea that government should be able to be the one to make the decisions about how the economy works. That doesn't tend to work well.
Yeah, right. In a free market economy, it's we as consumers, the masses of people, through our buying decisions, it's our decisions that drive the economy, that determine which businesses succeed or fail. But when we have government stepping in to provide privileges and subsidies and handouts and so forth, it leans more towards the politicians that are deciding the shape of the economy. They're really putting their thumb on the scale. So it really represents a shift from that power coming from or shifting from the consumers, the masses, into the hands of the politicians.
The fifth rotten aspect of this Apple deal you label Cooper's hypocrisy, talking about Governor Roy Cooper. Why is he being a hypocrite?
Right. Well, we've documented for years. Cooper has publicly talked about how he opposes corporate tax giveaways, but here we have a massive, the largest corporate tax giveaway in the state's history to the planet's largest corporation. So really, when Cooper talks about his opposition to corporate tax giveaways, he's really lying. He is in favor of granting tax giveaways to corporations as long as he's the one doing the hand-picking of the corporations of who gets to receive it. We would much rather see across-the-board tax cuts for all businesses applied fairly and equally.
And part of this is Governor Cooper sort of having the wrong definition of what constitutes a corporate tax giveaway, right? Basically, he's saying that an across-the-board cut that would help all corporations, that's a giveaway, but picking a company to give an incentive is not a giveaway. Doesn't seem to make sense.
Right. Well, and then there's the aspect where if it's an across-the-board cut, then you don't have those big headlines. Like you can make a big announcement for an Apple coming to North Carolina, have the ribbon-cutting ceremony. So it politically is less advantageous when it's just across the board because you don't get the big media hype.
Okay, the sixth item on your list is the rich get richer. And in this case, you've already referenced it, but we're talking about one of, if not the biggest company in the world getting some deal from taxpayers.
Right, and not only that, this incentive program, the Jobs Development Investment Grant Program, part of the reason for its creation was to help bolster economic growth in more rural counties, the lower income counties. But when you look at how the program has actually been utilized, I think it was about 60% of these incentive programs have actually been focused in on North Carolina's wealthiest two counties, which is, of course, are Wake and Mecklenburg County. And, of course, this Apple deal just kind of continues that trend.
And item number 7, you have a question mark. Apple, a champion of human rights?
Right, yeah, and part of the media coverage was some human rights groups, Equality NC, I think, maybe chiming in, talking about Apple being this pro-equality organization, a champion of human rights. But when you look at some of their dealings, especially in China, that begins to become called in question. Recent reports about some of Apple suppliers in China using forced labor, and of course China's really cozy relationship with the Communist government of China really calls into question, especially when Apple wants to try to lecture North Carolina's government about some of their policies. It really starts to ring hollow.
Well, we have briefly covered them. You can get more detail if you read this post. You'll find it at the Locker Room blog for the John Locke Foundation. It's titled 7 Rotten Aspects of North Carolina's Apple Deal. Its author is Brian Balfour, Senior Vice President of Research at the John Locke Foundation. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mitch.